Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our final session of using AI as a writing tool with our wonderful AI Writers Connection contributing author, Mira Gold. So, lots to cover today. So, I'll go ahead and turn it right over to you, Mira Gold. Thanks, everyone.
I want to thank everybody for joining us for our eighth session of our 8-week course. Joining me today is Cece and Lynn Jordan. Ladies, will y'all please introduce yourselves?
Good, Miss Lynn.
Oh, okay. I'm Lynn Jordan, and I retired from IT, and I also have been writing for publication for many years. And so AI combines both of those, and especially I have a passion for teaching, and so I've been able to merge all three of those into a wonderful time. This is great fun.
And I'm CC. You'll see me as word spinner on your screen. I will never retire because I'll be a writer until my very last days if I can. And my passion is for fiction, for writing specifically. And I so enjoy these classes because we get to see all different facets of writing involving a. Take it away, Mira.
Oh, definitely. And that's one of the things that I love. I like being able to stack some theory on top of some demonstrations and being able to move forward and actually showing how to use some of that theory in practical use. And that's some of the stuff that we have done through sessions 1 through 7. Now, the objectives for today's session are designed to recap the past 7 weeks and to give you a comprehensive understanding of AI's growing role in our industry. Over the prior 7 weeks, we plunged feet first into how AI can take on tasks ranging from fleshing out a story concept, writing prose, and cover art design, as well as writing succulent and engaging taglines, book blurbs, book descriptions, marketing, synopses, and ad copy. In a prior week's session, we demonstrated how to create marketing material using AI tools. Lynn actually walked us through using Midjourney and a couple of other platforms that we could actually build upon. And we did that, and I'm really hoping that what we covered during that time frame has inspired you and will move you toward working with your own projects. Our goal over this 8-week course was to inform and equip you with practical skills and knowledge that you can apply immediately to your work. The videos are out on AIWC's YouTube site for authors to view at any time. What we do, we want each and every one of you to feel confident in leveraging AI to enhance your writing, publishing, and marketing endeavors. So if there are any topics that we covered that you want a refresher on, feel free to go out and rewatch those videos as many times as you need. Ask questions, whether it is inside of the eGlobal teams or inside of eGlobal's Discord or inside of the AI Writers Connection Discord. Find us, ask questions. Great group of people who are always willing to answer some questions. Now, as stated today, we are wrapping up this series by revisiting our journey and focusing on the practical application of AI in writing. We'll begin with a brief recap of the key lessons from previous weeks, setting the stage for today's open forum. In our first week, we introduced AI technologies and their potential in creative writing. Within those overviews, we looked at AI writing tools, platforms such as Pseudowrite. We looked at novel. We also discussed the aspects of using other platforms like OpenAI or OpenRouter. We also talked about using ChatGPT, whether it's 3.5 or 4. We also talked about Claude. But there are so many other programs out there, some paid and some free. So always look for those resources that are available to you. And again, within the AIWC Discord, we have channels dedicated to some of the different author resources that you can go out and take a look at, kick the tires there, see if it's something that works for you. We also, during week 2, we begin to utilize AI for generating story ideas and plot outlines. We used it to explore different character development aspects of creating a story And we also used it for world building, for asking those questions, for having an exchange back and forth with an AI to help build the world or the story of our choice. We also did some interactive exercises for storytelling with AI. In week 3, we dove into using AI for refining narratives and adding depth. We used techniques for using AI in dialogue enhancement and scene creation. We also had a couple of case studies showcasing successful AI assisted narratives. In week 4, we explored how AI tools can be tailored to different writing genres. We also customized AI assistants for genres like sci fi, romance, mystery. We also analyzed genre specific examples and AI writing outputs. Whether you are writing to a broader spectrum of romance, or if you are drilling down into some very niche areas within the genre of romance, make sure that you're analyzing, make sure that you know who your audience is and that you are writing for that specific audience. And if what you want to write is within a niche area, make sure that you're studying that. If you're writing in the Omegaverse, make sure you're studying the different ins and outs of the Omegaverse and making sure that you're drilling down and you understand what readers expect. When you understand what a reader expects from you as a writer, it makes actually writing that content so much easier because, again, you understand what the expectations are for that genre. In week 5, we looked at strategies for using AI to overcome creative hurdles and writer's block. We also looked at some interactive real time problem solving and writing with using AI. With the AI, if you're stuck and you're not sure which plot point might work better or what conflict might drive the plot of, or the story arc forward, having that discussion with an AI and bouncing ideas off just opens up a world of knowledge. Sharing experiences and tips for effective AI utilization in challenging scenarios is something that I hope that moving forward, each and every one of you will share that knowledge with other writers, maybe individuals who have never used AI before, so that we can shine some light on how AI can be an effective resource tool. Again, a resource tool for authors. The AI does not write the story for us. We're the creatives. We guide the AI, and so, again, AI is our resource. In week 6, we learned to leverage AI for editing and proofing manuscripts, understanding AI's role in grammar, syntax, and style improvements. Now, is the AI fail proof? No. The AI is just a program. It is looking at things through indexing, which means that you may have to prompt it a couple of different times. Now, should you rely on AI 100% of the time? No, because again, AI is only as good as the information that's input into it, and it can misunderstand some of the prompts or instructions given, which is why you need to consistently bring it back on task. Workshops on editing a sample of text is something that we focused on, and using different platforms like, say, Claude for conducting evaluations or editorial feedback. We also looked at ChatGPT4 and how it could play the role of an editor in assisting you with some simple edits of your body of work, or if you felt that there was a gap or a hole somewhere, you're able to take that chapter, plug it into ChatGPT4, and ask questions. So again, it enables the writer to be able to have that discussion. If something's not working, AI, again, as a resource, can help move your story forward. In week 7, we investigated AI's impact on the publishing industry, especially when it came to marketing strategies. I don't know how many hours I used to spend on creating blurbs or marketing content that I might use on TikTok or on Twitter or Instagram or any number of social media platforms. Having the ability to upload my synopsis, my whole book, or even a couple of chapters and asking the AI to produce ad copy in a specific style that I'm looking for, either TikTok or any other social media platform, is huge. It allows me to invest my time where it really needs to be spent, which is writing more books. Be sure that you're using it to help enhance your process. Utilizing AI for book cover design, writing blurbs, and promotional material creation, that is one area that Lynn really focused on and actually showed us how she can create covers, whether it is in Midjourney or inside of ChatGPT4's Dall-e, or creating prompts to create book cover images inside a Claude, or even taking that content into, say, Playground AI or inside a BookBrush or even Canva. All of those areas help assist a writer in doing things that was not really possible for some authors, say, 5 years ago. For me, some of that content really helps me, and I've only been using AI for about a year now, and the things that Cece and I have been able to uncover are just phenomenal. There are things that I can do today that, again, used to take me days to do, that I can do in hours now by taking my written work and uploading it and asking for ad copy. Again, it really cuts down on the amount of time that I'm having to spend when it comes to creating promotional material. Now, some of our discussions on future trends of AI in publishing and author branding is something that I think is going to be a continued conversation. While we know that AI can help us today, the future holds so much promise whenever it comes to using AI and what it can assist us with. Now, I do want to state that today's hands-on demo and discussion, it is dedicated to you. This is your time. Tell us what you want to see in this recap. Is there something specific that you wanted to see in cover art creation? Is there something that you wanted us to go a little bit deeper on whenever it came to maybe fleshing out story beats or maybe even creating a story premise? What is on your mind today?
Come on, y'all, don't be shy. This is your one chance to nail Mira down and have one-on-one, essentially, so to say, time with her. Speak up. What kind of questions do you have about story creation, genres, prompting, covers? Let us know.
When it comes to story creation, that is one area that I've really seen change for me over the past year. I've always been one to brainstorm ideas. I have a whole folder on my computers dedicated inside of my Dropbox for just story creation. And I am not kidding when I tell you I have like over 1,000 story ideas in there. I am not joking. Am I, Lynn or Cece?
Oh, no.
Sadly,
And
she's not joking.
I'm a little repetitive when it comes to that area. And it's just something that I enjoy doing. Some people like to make jewelry. I like to come up with story concepts that I'm going to want to pick and choose from later and create those stories. So, are there any questions in the chat at this time?
Not a one.
Okay. At this time, since we don't have a question
Well,
right
does
now,
it mean that we taught so well that everybody understands everything and they're all ready to go out and write their books?
I am so ready to see some books. Now, I am actually going to jump into a topic. Can I get somebody to confirm that you see a chat GPT-4 screen?
Confirmed.
Okay, so since we're waiting for additional questions, I'm going to go ahead and open the floor up with talking to you a little bit about a tried and true formula. When it comes to the phrasing that you might hear about, "Hey, what is the premise of your story? Hey, do you have a tagline? Or do you know a log line for your content?" If somebody's asking you for that quick 1 to 2 sentence on what your story is about, and you're sitting there thinking, "I can tell you what my story is in about 30 minutes." If you are being asked that at a conference and somebody wants to know just in 1 to 2 sentences what your story is about, would you be able to tell them that? Would you be able to tell them what your story is about at its core. In order to do that, there are a couple of key elements that you need to that you must know. One, when a major event happens, the central character must perform the main action or goal, and this important thing is at stake. Again, this is a tried and true formula. It is one that I use today, and I use it over and over again. And this is something that I actually learned in my early days with Cece because she was one of my very first editors. And that's one of the exercises that she gave me as a fledgling writer to say, hey, tell me what your story is about in one sentence, two max. And I want to know the whole core basis of it. And it took me so long to figure out how to write that single sentence. So I wanted to share a little bit with you about that. But before I dive into that, are there any questions in the chat?
No questions in chat.
Okay, so I asked that same question, and we will share this link with you so that you can pull up this chat discussion. And when I asked chat to define my tried and true formula, it lets me know that it is a classic structure often used in crafting compelling premises, taglines, and loglines. And it's used for not only stories, but screenplays and marketing material as well. Now, it is designed to provide that clear and concise summary of a story's core elements. Now, when you drill down deeper, and we want to take a look at this formula closer, when a major event happens, let's focus on that. When a major event happens. This part, as it states here on screen, sets the stage, introducing that inciting incident or the event that kicks off the story. It's the catalyst that disrupts the ordinary world of the protagonist, and it compels them, him or her, to take action. This element is crucial as it's what hooks your audience's interest, and it also establishes that narrative direction of your story. Now, let's talk about your central character. Whether it is called a central character, your main character, your protagonist, this component introduces your protagonist or main character, the story. It's important to present your character in relation to that major event that is happening, as their response to this event is what is actually going to drive your story forward. Their response is what makes that story happen. The protagonist is typically somebody that the audience can root for, and they want to be able to empathize with this character. And it might be a character who's mysterious or intriguing. Now, number three, when it comes to must perform the main action or goal, when we're looking at this, here within your outline, the protagonist's primary objective or that main action that they must take in response to that inciting incident, it's pivotal in your story. This part of the formula is about the journey or the quest that the protagonist embarks upon. Again, each one of these elements are so important to your story. Number four, and this important thing is at stake. The stakes are what give your story its tension and urgency. And let me tell you, out of the four little steps that are right here of understanding this formula, the one area that I see people skim over frequently is number four. What's at stake? If there's nothing at stake and the character gets everything that he or she wants and it just lands in their lap, then what's truly at stake for your character? If they need something and then it magically appears, then the character's not really having to work for it. So we really need to know what's at stake. Now, this element clarifies what the protagonist stands to lose or gain and why the audience should care about your protagonist's journey. Now, high stakes will heighten that emotional investment of the audience, and it also provides a compelling reason for your protagonist, your character, to pursue his or her goal despite the obstacles that kind of cross that character's pathway. Now, what are the benefits of using the formula? Well,
Hey,
Mira, I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead.
Before
No,
you move on to the
please.
next session,
Mhm.
section, I have a question in chat, and I wanted to interrupt you because I don't know
Sure.
if you'll find that this is relevant to speak to at this point. But Dion
Sure.
says, would you use GPT 3.5 or 4 only for going from ideation to prose, or would you use other AI software? What would you consider having used all the programs to be the optimal workflow for you in terms of going from idea to prose generation? Which software would you use for the various steps?
I have used a lot of them, and keep in mind, this is my opinion, it's not fact. And my opinion could differ from Cece's or even Miss Lynn's or Galen's or anybody else's. I am comfortable with ChatGPT4. I like the way that I can brainstorm in there. I even like the way that it will take me from my premise or concept creation all the way through fleshing out my characters, my story. I even like the way that it will help me draft some of my story beats. Now, do I use what it gives me 100%? No, because I still have to feed information to that LLM. And I also have to rewrite my story beats because let's face it, it only gives me that skeleton. And if I'm building up a person or that story or building a house, it's giving me that foundation or that skeletal system. And what I can add to it or bring to the table is what is going to fill out the structure of a house or is going to start to weave those ligaments, those tendons, all of the muscle connective tissue, and layering it with some skin. Again, it's the information that I can input into my story. I just use the LLM as my organization and I can brainstorm in there. Now, does that mean that I will not use other LLMs other than ChatGPT4? No, I actually like to use Claude. Claude can have some extremely creative concepts in there, but I have found that if I'm using Claude, I really like Claude when it comes to creating maybe a young adult or a middle grade, or even creating something that is just going to be very whimsical, or even say a young adult or new adult academy. I like using Claude there. I even like the prose that Claude can generate. Now, if I'm going to create, say, a script for a pilot, then you know what? I'm probably going to jump right back into ChatGPT4 because I do like the way that ChatGPT4 will create the concepts or flesh out my beats for a script. Now, can I use other LLMs or other platforms for script writing? I've actually used Pseudo-Write's Story Bible for that. Formerly, I used Story Engine for that, and it did really well. I've also used Jasper for some creation of scripts, and I liked that as well. And I use Novel Crafter to play around inside of for scripts as well. So I guess it comes down to what genre I'm writing in on depending on which LLM I like best. What about you, Lynn and Cece? Which one do you prefer and why?
I usually do what you do about starting with the premise, and I can start that in I use ChatGPT and Claude because I do if I'm doing more of a fantasy kind of story, and if I really don't have an idea where it needs to go, I might use Claude. If I do have a specific idea about the story and it's more serious, like for instance, I was testing a fine tune yesterday and I found out I really needed a new project that wasn't going to work. I was doing romantic suspense and I did that within chat because they both have a huge context window and you can follow along, you can ask questions and you can say, no, that's not right. What if we did this? And actually go back and forth with the chat. So I do like to get, if we're talking about pseudo right, most of the story Bible elements I can get from either chat or Claude. And then I can pull them into Sudowrite and actually write the prose there. Or I've been doing a little bit more with Rexy lately with
And Rexy
recently.
is through FFA, correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
And they have added chaining so that you can chain your prompts together. And that helps keep it cohesive because one of the downfalls, weaknesses of pseudo-write is that one chapter doesn't know about another chapter. Now, when I'm doing different versions of chapters, I really like that. But when I've decided on a final and I want them to flow together smoothly, then I have to do that manually unless I use a tool that can look back like Rexy.
Now, do you find that there are pros and cons to having it maybe be able to see the prior chapters versus having it siloed? What would you say are some of the pros and cons of that, Lynn?
As I said, the pro is that I love your model of end on a cliffhanger. And so Soonerite has given me some wonderful cliffhangers, but has no idea how to pick it up from there. It doesn't know what it's thinking any more than I do. So the flow from one chapter to another is probably the biggest thing about having a context window that knows what went on before. And you can get that same kind of prose out of chat and out of Claude if you prompt it just right. However, if you're doing that, especially if you're setting them up for automatic chaining, if it goes off the rail, you may not catch it fast enough. And you may waste a whole lot of tokens on something you really don't like. So I know the idea is to set it and let it run, but in my experience, you have to watch it pretty closely if you don't have your outline totally fleshed out and nailed down, which I tend not to do because I'm more of a pantser, so I let it go along its way. With all the tools, there are good and bad, and things that work with the way you work and things that don't. My way is not Marigold's way, it's not Cece's way, and it's not your way. So you have to figure out what works for you. And you don't have to learn them all. I know quite a bit of them. Marigold and Cece know quite a bit of them because we teach a whole lot of, but that's not necessarily the best for actual production. It's not the best way to get your books published, trust me. Find what works for you.
And to that point, my process differs from Len and from Cece, and I tend to be an extreme plotter planner. Len is a pantser, and Cece, would you say that you fall in between the two? And can you tell us which of the LLMs you like or the platforms that you like and why?
Yeah, I'm probably more of a hybrid in terms of plotting, but so I'm a hybrid when I am the one writing organically and creating it. But when it comes to having AI create prose, I find myself doing a whole lot more plotting because it needs a direction. So that's where I start. If you want, I'll take a second to show a little bit of my process if you want me to share my screen.
Yeah, let me go ahead and stop sharing, and that way you can pull up your screen.
It won't be a long class or anything like that. I'm not teaching y'all anything, but I'll just show you in brief if I can get it to work for me. Am I showing? Oop,
Not yet.
Nope.
let's try it now. How about now?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. As you can see, I'm in ChatGPT4. I prefer 4 to 3.5. Yes, it cost me $20 a month, but the results are well worth it to me. They're much more focused. So I would start saying something like, I want to create 10 premises for Western historical romances. If they're a simple premise with a single plot, no subplots, because they'll be shorter. So then I started thinking I didn't know what the timeline I wanted to be, and so I asked it point blank, "What do you think is the best time to place a mail order bride historical American Western romance?" So it gives me all the answers here. Now I'm just skimming over it so you can see how I then come to the next questions because I hadn't really considered my instructions through to the end. So I had to tell it that I want them to be a series. So that means characters will make cameo appearances. Keep that word in mind, cameo appearances in each other's books. Knowing this, I asked it to give me 10 MOB premises to make sure the premises mention the cameos that it features of recurring characters and that not all characters have to be in all 10 books. Because the I might take it a little bit too literal and not knowing what you intend, it's going to throw them all in there. So I had to ask it for that. So then it goes and creates my 10 premises here. All right. Then I thought, I don't know a working title for my series. So I asked it to give me 20 ideas for a working title. I just grab one at random. It doesn't mean that it's just something to put on the file name for Microsoft Word. So then I asked it to flesh out book one. And so and I said to fleshes out the first premise. Okay. So it does that. So here we have the synopsis. It's all the way to right here. That's where it ends. So you can see quite a few paragraphs. Now, it left a lot of stuff open-ended when I read it. And so I told it that I needed it to figure out and list the stuff that's not fleshed out. So it does that right here. Okay. So then I told it to redo the synopsis. And I'm showing this to you guys so you can know you can have a conversation with it. And whatever it gives you is not the end all be all. If you don't like it, if it doesn't give you what you need for that story to be, you ask it for more. And so I did. I asked it to redo the synopsis by fleshing out the stuff that he mentioned above, where I asked him to mention that. And yes, for me, ChatGPT is a he. So then we have it expands it and includes more detailed elements which it had left open-ended, and it's calling it the expanded synopsis right here. Oops, right there. And so after it's done all that, then I said, can you turn this into 20 chapters, alternating POVs between Elizabeth and Jacob, and starting with Elizabeth? And it starts that, and it's done that right here. So you see 20 chapters. Each one has an alternating POV, as you can see, 19 and 20, Elizabeth, Jacob. Then I analyzed chapter 1. I said it didn't have enough stakes. Okay, so it needs to give it more stakes. And because after all, it's about our characters, and we're supposed to feel what they're feeling. And if they're not having anything to feel, why do we care to read further? We don't. So it rewrote chapter 1, 10 beats. Okay, 10 beats, chapter 1, Elizabeth's POV with more stakes. So then I move along and I say, okay, so nothing is really happening in chapter 2. Let's give Jacob a reason to put the ad out, and so on and so forth. That's my process, guys. So what I do is after this, I take it and I will put those beat into a writing program. Today, it's pseudo-write. Tomorrow, it may not be, because I'm always shopping for the very best writing program that could give me what I need. And some writing programs don't. They're what you call NSFW. In other words, there's no steamy scene. So I have to be careful that if I do something in a program that doesn't write steamy scenes, then I need to transfer my work over to another program where I can get the steamy scenes, unless I want to write them myself. And let me tell you this, that's the last thing I want to write. I'm more about the story than about the sex. And nothing wrong with the sex, but I don't care to read it because I'm more involved in the storyline and the plot. And that is my process. I hope I didn't bore y'all or go too fast or say anything unnecessary, but that's where I go.
And Cece, whenever you're fleshing out a body of work, you really go back and forth and ask a lot of probing questions, correct?
Yes, I do. And I ask it to give me, and you hadn't seen it yet, but I ask it to give me a summary of the settings and to describe them. I ask it to give me a summary of the characters and to describe them, and to give me the backstory that makes them act the way they do for the characters that I care enough about to show that. Because let's face it, not every single character in every single book is going to be important enough to the story to flesh out to that degree.
So, one of the things that I like to tell writers when they are trying to figure out how they can tell somebody about their story, if Galen said, "Hey, Mira, what are you working on today? What can you tell me about your current story in 1 to 2 sentences?" I would want to be able to answer that question. And as a writer, that is a skill that we need to consistently be working on. And one of the ways to do that is anytime that you're thinking of a brand new story or concept, start asking yourself, how can I explain this to somebody in, say, 1 or 2 sentences? And a good way or a good experiment for this is to open up your television guide on your TV and start looking through some of the either television shows or even look at some of the movies and see what those 1 to 2 sentences, what those log lines there, look at how they read. You're going to find that same process there when we are talking about actually showing our content to somebody. Say, we want to know who the character is, what the premise is. We need to know what's at stake. We need to know that inciting incident. So when we are taking a look at all of that, and again, earlier we were looking at this link. When a major event happens, the central character must perform the main action or goal, and this important thing is at stake. Now, I went out and I scoured the internet and I actually found this site here that says Story Premise Examples. It gives you 500 sample story premises and log lines. Now, it says to work from, but I'm going to caution you. I would never use any of these because some of these are actual movies and that have already been produced. The reason why I'm showing these to you today is because it helps you understand what that story premise or log line could look like. Say you are, if you've ever seen, I believe it's The Net, where it talks about Angela Bennett's a software engineer type who works from home and has a few friends outside of cyberspace. Taking her first vacation in years, she becomes embroiled in a web of computer espionage. Okay, again, this gives you that little rundown of that formula. If you go down further, and it's broken up by action, romance, science fiction. So again, take a look at how some of these are written so that you get an idea of how you want to write your concept, at least the core part of your story. And this is such a hard thing to write when you've already written, say, 30,000 words, 50,000 words, maybe 100,000 words plus. On some of the serialized bodies, some of them can be 100,000, 200,000, 300,000 words. And if there are multiple seasons, that number can even go up higher. And that's why I'm saying think about how you can categorize your story. What genre is it in? And how can you tell somebody what your season is about in 1 to 2 sentences? And again, that's why I've provided this link. And I believe Cece and Lynn can share this with you. Again, this is not for you to use any of these premises for your storytelling or as a concept to develop. These are produced bodies. This is only for you to use as an example of what a premise or a tagline or a log line would look like for existing bodies so that it gives you a picture or a window into how to create your own body. Are there any questions about story premise examples or how to create a story premise?
There are none in chat. May I add something to what you're speaking?
Please.
What Mira is essentially telling y'all about is also known as an elevator pitch. So imagine the time it takes you to get from one floor to another. And imagine you've gone to a conference, just curious maybe, or just whatever the case may be, and you're on an elevator with someone who happens to be a literary agent or an acquisitions editor. You've got that short time from one floor to the next. Do you want to pitch? Do you care? Do you want to find out if there's interest in what you've got? Have your pitch ready. You might run into someone in line at Starbucks that actually does that for a living too. And they might ask you, "Oh, what do you do?" They see your computer and you're like, "Oh, I'm a writer." When they ask you one question, have your pitch ready. You never know. Maybe you don't want to have your manuscript turned into a movie or acquired by a big house. Or maybe you would. Just be ready. It doesn't hurt to be ready. Plus, say you just meet someone in the grocery store and they ask you what you're writing on now, what you're working on. Have that pitch ready so their eyes don't glaze over as you go into a 30-minute spiel about what your current project is about. So it doesn't hurt to be ready and have an elevator pitch memorized in your head. That's it.
Yeah, and you can practice it. I'm not kidding. So Cece said, if you are at the grocery store and somebody says, "Hey, what are you working on?" Make sure that you practice because every time somebody asks you that, it is an opportunity for you to practice your craft of how you can pitch a premise, how you can pitch maybe that season idea. And if you have multiple seasons, say if you are with eGlobal and you have multiple seasons, Cajun Heat is a story that was just contracted by eGlobal. And Cajun Heat, I already have the first season written, but I have already projected the next, say, 3 seasons. I need to make sure that whenever I am going forward and talking to people about my story, that I can give them an elevator pitch for season 1, for season 2, for season 3, for season 4. And by practicing that, it enables me to stay within my story and stay within those confines because there's nothing worse than being somewhere and having somebody say, "Hey, what are you working on?" And 30 minutes later, you still haven't told them the whole gist of what your story is about. Practice giving them the overall picture in 1 to 2 sentences of what your body of work is about. And let me tell you, when you're able to do that, people are more apt to say, "Oh, wow, that sounds really interesting. Can you tell me more?" And that's when you can dive a little bit deeper into the different segments, but learn to read your audience. Are there any questions inside of the chat at this time?
No, ma'am, you're good.
Len, what are some of the tips that you might have for individuals when it comes to either story writing, for craft, or even for marketing? What are some of the things that you look at when it comes to understanding story, especially if you are helping an author with, say, their marketing side of the business? How much information do you need to know in order to help somebody with marketing?
I need to know that the person actually understands their story. Because if you can't concisely describe it the way Mira Gold has been talking to us about, then probably you don't understand your story enough. You want to know the important parts. You especially want to know your genre, your audience, and what the expectations are of that audience. And you can certainly ask the LLMs if you're not sure yourself. And for instance, this week I had a client that she was trying to do a book description, something. And so I said, "Send me what you've got." And I looked it over, and yes, I could have rewritten it. It wasn't compelling at all. It didn't do anything. And I could have fixed it, but it was easier for me to stick it into ChatGPT and say, "Make this more compelling." It certainly did that. And now, maybe unfortunately, she says, "This sounds so good, I'm not sure my book's going to live up to it." So I may encourage her to maybe use some LLMs to do some editing on the book. I haven't read the book. I was just helping her with marketing material.
So, when you're taking a look at what maybe some books have out there, when you're looking at blurbs or even looking at some of the quick little punchy things that they might have, I know that eGlobal is a serialized platform. And with a serialized platform, their content is presented a little bit different. And we can definitely bring up, say, novel, cat, or dream, and take a look at some of those platforms as well. If people in the audience are interested in that, we can bring that up. But my go-to here was Amazon, and all I did was pull up romance books or bestsellers of 2023. And by doing that, I was able to see what the Goodreads choices are. I got to see what the editor's pick is. What you want to do is click on that. Take a look at how that book is introduced. We know that we have these little taglines. We have something that's quick and punchy to tell us a little bit about our story. And then our little description here gives us more information about the story. Now, if you do write something, say, in the dark mafia or billionaire club, or maybe you're even writing maybe a romantic suspense, if there are triggers in your body of work, make sure that you're listing what your triggers are down at the bottom of your book, just so that at the bottom of, say, your blurb, just so that readers know what to expect. If you are, say, an eGlobal author and you have a serialized body of work, and you want to take that serialized body and maybe at some point you'll have a discussion with eGlobal and say, "Hey, I'd really like to turn these into books. How can I do that?" If you turn them into books, then say, like with Cajun Heat, I have over 100,000 words in the first season. And if I wanted to, I could flip those and turn those into individual books. And my first book, if I were to find a stopping point, would be about 58,000 words in that first fourth of that body. But I could write in an ending that would have a cliffhanger so that I could have a second book, which would probably be about the same length. And I could do that with 4 different segments that would make up that first season. So again, think about your body of work. Even though you may have written a serialized body of work, you can still find other formats that
Are
you
you
might
there?
want to work with. Yes. Hello, Len?
Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. I didn't know if I had dropped off. We've been having thunderstorms, so I wanted
Yeah,
to
but
make
wait,
sure I hadn't dropped.
that's a good time to make a break because we got questions and chat, and so I'm glad that
Perfect.
I think maybe Lynn was gonna allude to that. So, you have a question from M, but it's one that
Sure.
she's gonna have to clarify because she says she'd like to see what the other platforms look like and the difference in how they're set up. And Lynn was asking her, does she want chat platforms or writing platforms? I wasn't sure if it was retail platforms. Maybe we need to ask M to let us know what she's asking. Retail plat. Okay. So,
I'm gonna jump in here. I think M probably what we're referring to the reading platforms, like the serialized online novel platforms. Okay. So those were so we have Dreamy. They're to a degree they're very similar. Have you heard of things like Radish? I think some of the most popular ones are Radish, Dreamy, Good Novel, web novels. Any of those, have you heard of that before? And okay, basically, the other platforms are very similar to web novel. If you're familiar with web novel, the only thing that are different, they are to a degree also look like Amazon KDP, but the only difference is normally KDPs as books that are wider in genre because they're more, they includes not just the fictions, but anything, right? Non-fictions, historical, anything like that. But the other platforms that and earlier Mira Gold actually had mentioned, and those are some of the most well-known online serialized fiction platforms. Those are more focused on fiction itself. They're very similar to web novel. A little bit differences in terms of look and feel, but the concept are the same. So if you're familiar with web novel, basically those are similar platforms. The web novels stories are more focused towards fantasy. And then there are things like Radish, Dreamy, Good Novel. They are more focused on romance or romance stories, I would say. So it's just a little bit more towards which niche they are in terms of the genre.
To your point, I've actually pulled up three of those sites. I have Dream, I have Radish, and I have Web Novel. Currently up on screen is Radish, and as you had stated, a lot of them are similar in, I guess, in the way that they format things because you're still going to be able to read them. Most of these you're going to want to read on your phone, but I can actually come in and I can take a look at some of these bodies. Now, like for Radish, you can download the app for either Apple or for your Android phone, and you can go in and read some of the content that they have here. Now, I highly recommend if you are really looking to write serialized bodies, I recommend that you go out to some of these sites that were mentioned and read some of their top stories and understand what it is that maybe eGlobal is looking for and what the readership for serialized bodies, what the readership likes. Because if you're reading, say, the top 10 stories of each one of these sites, you know that you're going to find out who the target audience is. You're going to find out what kind of story resonates. Again, here's Radish. You can actually go through eGlobal, and by submitting with eGlobal and becoming an author there, one of the things that I don't have to worry about is trying to manage every single one of these individual platforms. And some of these platforms, I'll be honest with you, when I went in to look at them, they were a little bit complicated for me to try to figure out how to manage moving around and trying to set up my own profile. But by using eGlobal and contracting through them, I knew that they were protecting my interest as an author, and they were able to hit more of the platforms than I was able to do. And plus, I had that extra added layer of kind of feeling that comfort level of knowing that as an author there, that they, again, were protecting my interests. So again, through I could either go direct with Radish or with other bodies that are brand new. I can go and do Radish direct through eGlobal with some of the places or the platforms that they release to as a publisher. Now, I know that whenever I'm in Dream, I actually find that a lot of my paranormal stuff does pretty good there. But again, I'm not direct with them. I do them through eGlobal. And you can see here that the ranking, you have your best selling, you have moon ticket ranking, you get to read all the different ones that are here. And you can wait to have some of the chapters or episodes unlocked. Some of them allow a session to unlock, say, every hour, and you can read something if you wait. Others, you have to actually pay for the coins, which I think it's 3 cents or something like that, 3 to 5 cents. So it's not very much that you're paying per episode. And you will typically find that your episodes, I would say on average, are anywhere from, say, 1,500 words to 3,000 words. I know that authors try to be more consistent when they're writing on a serialized platform because readers begin to expect that those episodes, which a novelist is going to see as chapters, that those episodes, when they are consistent or around the same length, it tends to make the readers a bit happier in this specific platform. Were there any questions on the sites that I had up?
Nothing in
Okay.
Mira Gold, this is Jinsha, can I just add a few things?
Yes, please.
So I know like we started this conversation with trying to compare the synapses between the serialized fiction versus like the KTP fiction. In general, the overall techniques of writing attractive or captivating synapses are across different platforms are very similar, to be honest. So I don't think there are a particular formula for KDP versus formulas for the other platforms. I think if we use ChatGPT to help using a very well accepted or proven formula, they will work regardless whether you're publishing on KTP, on Amazon, or the other series online fictions. So I just wanted to add that.
100% agree. Now, the only thing that I find on there is that you have to make sure that you're falling within the character count or word count of a specific platform. Some platforms allow you to have more words or characters than others. Now, on KDP, they will allow you to have a much longer blurb, but on some of these, you may end up with a shorter area to be able to put your blurb in. So that's why it's important for you to have some short and some long blurbs. Have a couple of different ones. If you notice that one isn't grabbing your reader's attention, then make sure that you can change that out if needed to be able to grab your reader's attention. Were there any other questions inside of the queue at this time?
nothing in the queue, but to your point, what Mira said about having to change one out or another one out. When you ask ChatGPT to create, say, your blurb, ask it to create all of the above: a log line, a tagline, a short blurb, a long blurb, one in first person, one in third person, and have it do all of those in one time. Take it, create a Word document or whatever other format you may use for saving stuff on, put them all in there and put in the same folder that you're keeping your story, so that when you have to provide something, say maybe even in a pinch, you have access to it immediately because you don't always have time to switch stuff up. Say you're booking an ad on Free Booksy, for example. Now, this is for novels. It's not for what you would do with eGlobal, but I'm sure some of you will go both ways or all of the above. Use Free Booksy will make you use maybe, I think it's 300 characters or less. So keep all of that in mind. So have various ones ready to go and you just have them right there in one file so you don't have to play around or go back and have it create stuff. Oh, and now we have a question in the queue. How perfect. From M. What's the main difference between serialized fiction and publishing a novel aside from having cliffhanger endings? Mira?
When I think about a serialized body of work, I guess the way that it makes sense in my head is that I think of that serialized body as written like you would watch a soap opera. It is, you're revisiting the characters time and time again. You are unfolding that story. And a lot of them, like, say, see, is it on Radish? One of the stories that is really popular is this one right here, for the billionaire surrogate. On the billionaire surrogate, that one has like thousands upon thousands of episodes. And the reason for that is that Think of it as like Days of Our Lives or some other soap where you are following the same cast of characters time and time again. And when one season ends, like on a television show or series or on that soap opera, it might end in a cliffhanger. But then when you come back to season 2, you kick off with those characters again. And whatever that climatic event was at the end of season 1, you start with unraveling that in season 2. And then season 2 builds to show what that new storyline is. It's a new adventure, it's a new story that takes place. And once that is done, you want to make sure that your story has enough legs to stand on. You want to make sure that serialized body, you can see it have continued storylines for that first season, that second season. Think about where your story can be 5 seasons from now. And that's one of the things that I look at when I'm doing a serialized body. When I'm writing a novel series, my novel series might be anywhere from, say, 50,000 words to maybe 80,000 words for a single book. And then book 2 might be either anywhere from 50,000 to say 80, 90,000 words. And I might have a trilogy. I might have a new couple for each book that's built in the same world, or I might even follow the same 2 characters, but it's not written per se like a soap opera. It's not written in that serialized format. It has a story and it concludes and it ends. On a serialized body where season 1 might close a specific thread, you have overreaching arcs that will continue into season 2's arc, maybe even into season's 3 arc. Now, the other thing to that is that if you're, say, you're an author on KDP and you have, I believe Cece had she had the series set up for mail order brides. Maybe each one of her mail order bride books, maybe there's 12 of them, and maybe all 12 of those books have a brand new couple each time. You can still put that on a serialized platform, but you would break it up to be season 1 would be book 1, season 2 would be book 2, season 3 would be book 3. So you have to decide what kind of serialized body of work you want to write. Are you going to take your backlog, your back catalog, and put those books into a serialized platform? Or are you going to write a story from scratch to be serialized to take place across that serialized platform? Now, some of the things that you can find on a serialized platform would be, let's see, what was it? The Never King, that was on a serialized platform at one point. We also have, like I was stating, the Billionaire Surrogate, this one, the Vampire Prep. All of those were started and flow into different seasons about the body of work. Now, from eGlobal standpoint, when y'all are looking for a serialized body of work or you're reviewing a body, what are some of the things that you look at when you are looking at an author's backlog, maybe different books that they might have in ebook form that might be suitable to put on serialized platforms versus maybe a body of work that is written specifically for a serialized platform? And that would be Galen or and I don't wanna butcher your name, Jean.
Yes.
We have a
Uh,
comment from Gayleen in the chat. She
Okay.
says it's also a slightly different writing style for serial online fiction. The reader hasn't made any investment in the book when they start the first chapters. You need to jump
Yep.
right into the action and intersperse setting, backstory, etc., with that action and dialogue. And what she's saying, you got to hook them. So I think you have sometimes the first 3 episodes or X amount of episodes. That is your chance to grab that reader by the throat and bring them along for the ride. So you got to lay it out there with everything you got in terms of what will hook them into your story. Am I right, Gay? Am I doing right?
Absolutely. Yeah. There's just thousands and thousands of stories out there. And yeah, they've made no investment. They haven't bought a physical book and they're like, okay, I can read this. I have time, right? I can read about what's the background of this, fantasy world or something like that. You just need to jump in right away with something that's really interesting, exciting, something that really gets them hooked. If it's romance, you want to get them hooked on these characters and their relationship together. If it's a fantasy, you need to get them into that world a lot quicker than you would in traditionally published novel. Now, that said, you do get a little bit of samples, say on Amazon and stuff. You can sample usually the first couple of chapters, but that requires a lot of clicking through. You've got maybe we'll say 5 to 10-ish chapters that are free on these platforms for all of these stories. So if they're getting through chapter 2 and they're like, one kind of drew me in, but I'm not really into this now, then they'll just skip over to some other story because they haven't made any investment. So you're exactly right. You have to really make that hook and really draw them in right away. And then they're yours because they'll be invested in your characters and your story and they'll keep reading it. So just wanted to throw that in. Thank you.
Absolutely. And guys, that's also it's a very good habit to have, regardless of what platform you're writing for, whether it's Amazon or whether it's Kobo, Barnes& Noble if you go wide, or if it's eGlobal. Get them hooked right off the get-go. Don't spend all your time building up that world because then you've given them nothing to care about in terms of people. So there's a thought.
Yeah, that first line, you want to hook the reader, you want to draw them in. And to Galen's point, so if I go into KDP and I'm looking at this book and I'm looking at the look inside, of course, I can see the content, I can see how the chapters are set up, but it takes me straight to reading chapter 1 and I can see what's in chapter 1 and it only gives me about the first 10% of the book when I read chapter 1. So the longer the book is, the word count, the longer your 10% look inside is going to be. When you are inside of some of these other platforms and we are taking a look at that little preview. So we do have a free preview. I clicked on this book here, The Guardian Wolf and Her Alpha Mate. I can see that this person has 16.7 thousand followers and 41.7 thousand reads. If I scroll down, I can see the blurb, and this blurb is actually really short, and there's nothing wrong with having a short blurb as long as it's something that catches your reader's eye. Now, we do know that serialized platforms might work a little bit different and the way that it may be presented. And here you get to see that our first episode has a title. We know that it's Nova's POV, and it starts with dialogue here. Mate. One word. That's all it took. And my life as I knew it had changed. So right then and there, what Galen was saying, what Cece was saying, make sure that your serialized body has specific information. You want to make sure that your body of work is going to catch your reader's attention.
And that's one thing you need to watch out for with any of the AI models, because they tend to make the same mistakes that beginning writers do. And one of the things is they like to start with a lot of description, a lot of backstory. They need to know the story before they can actually start to write the story. And that is exactly the same thing that beginning writers do. You need the information that maybe you put in your first 3 chapters, but the reader doesn't. So that's where you have to bring in your human creativity and your knowledge of writing skills and what will draw a reader in. You can't just take the AI's output or the recommendation. If you feed a chapter through a AI, have it look as a developmental editor, it'll say, you need to flesh out the description. We need to know how these characters relate to each other. No, you don't. Not right at first. You need to draw the reader in.
Agreed. Guys, here's a little exercise for you that you can play with. Take your first chapter of your current work, put it in ChatGPT4 if you have it, 3.5 if you don't, and tell it to give you 10 different versions and tell it what you want. Tell it if you want it to be more of a hook. Tell it if you want it to be gritty or to be dark or to anything that you can think of, put it in there and tell it, give me 10 examples. of rewriting this paragraph to fit X standards, and then tweak it and then work with it and tell them to do it again, tell them to do it differently, and see if you can get it to give you something that just would absolutely grab a reader's attention and pull them along for the ride. Just a thought. Play with it.
If I could jump in again, something and this might help with AI and just anything you've written as well, but I've had several authors who have come to me. They're either new or they're experienced and they've written other ones, but they're trying to write for serial online fiction. And one of the things that has worked really well for some of them is I've suggested take chapter 2 and make it chapter 1. Because I've read through chapter 1 and there's a lot of exposition. There's a lot exposition. There's a lot of world building, that kind of a thing. But then I got to chapter 2 and I read their examples and wow, I was like, wow, that just popped. Look at the energy in chapter 2 because you've gotten past all that. And then now you're into the story. And that's where you need to start is in that story. Now take chapter 1 and all that information needs to be in the book, but let's spread it out and move it into the other things. So that might work if AI tends to want to do a lot of exposition. That might work as, okay, there's their chapter 1, but maybe chapter 2 is a better place to start and work all that other stuff through. So that's something to think about as well.
And it's so true. What's funny is the AI is just doing what we're telling it to do. So we're giving them these beats that are producing a story where really the first chapter is dead. It shouldn't even be there. But yet writers sometimes put that in there. So I'm not saying it's not true. I'm saying it's absolutely true, but we have control of that horse. So we need to control that horse. And when I'm wearing my editor's hat and I'm helping an author out, I hate the reaction I get when I tell them, can you just kill chapter 1? And they just, you they feel like you've asked them to kill their babies. And but
Yeah,
look,
they don't like it,
no,
but it works. And then when you
yes,
tell them, go back and look at it, take a look, pretend that
yes,
you've never read this book before and start with chapter 2. And they'll be like, oh, wow, you're right. You're
and
just drawing me in.
yeah,
That's a technique that can work for any writing. It's just maybe when you're in there, I liken it to if you're watching a TV series. I'll show my age here and go back to Cheers, right? I'm like really old. If you go back and watch reruns and you watch episode 1, nobody's really in character. Everybody's working out how is this character going to be? What's going to be their traits? I'm not really sure yet as an actor. And then they build into that. And if you go back to episode 1 of some of these series, you'll see that yeah, this is something a little bit iffy off about that because it's not quite where the characters were. And then as they went, they got better. And when you're sitting down to write something, it's the beginning of it. You're not really sure that you're in that world either. There's a little hesitation that is evident in that first chapter that maybe needs to be put aside. And it's not that it's all gone, it can be worked in later. But I found that works a lot with a lot of the writers that I've worked with.
so true. And it harkens back to what Lynn said, which is know your story, know your characters. So you're essentially what you're saying is know your characters. And that's what you should do. And that's how when you're talking about Cheers, I know exactly what you mean. They were trying to feel their way into who their character was. And we had to watch the awkwardness of that happening, I guess you could say.
Definitely. And I liked what I believe it was Gayleen who said, when that story starts, you need to jump into the actual story. Don't keep people in headspace. Don't keep people in that exposition. Jump right into the story. What's happening in real time? So think of your story. If it was a movie playing in your head or a television series playing in your head, what would that opening scene look like? Where would your characters be? What are they doing? I'm sure that they're not just an open space of headspace where you're just inside of their brain listening to their thoughts. We want to see where the action actually starts. We want to know where things begin. Can Headspace have its time and place in a book or in a serialized body? Sure. But we definitely want to make sure that we are starting with that dynamic event, dialogue, action, that quick engaging moment that kind of pulls that reader in because you only have one chance to pull that reader in. As soon as they open up and look at that first episode, if it's a whole bunch of exposition that maybe the writer thinks that the reader needs to know before the really fun stuff starts, the reader is probably going to walk away from that because the real story hasn't started. So make sure that your story starts where your story is actually beginning. Don't start it in a headspace.
That's right. As an editor, if you tell me, "Oh, but wait until you get to chapter XYZ," no, chapter XYZ is not gonna happen because I've already walked away. You gotta give me what you got right now, right up front. You don't get to the Super Bowl if you don't win the games. So don't say, "Wait until the 10th game, we're really gonna hit our stride then." You're not going to the Super Bowl, buddy. I hate to even say Super Bowl because this is football season right now, and I'm not a football watcher, even though Miss Lynn is, college that is. But anyhow, that's all of this. I hope you guys are getting the importance of what you're hearing, which is grab the reader, do what you got
Well,
to do, give
CC,
the action. Yeah,
as an editor,
yeah,
and I know this comes up more in contests
yes,
rather than as an editor, because as an editor, it doesn't make the first cut. But how many times have you had a manuscript and you've written on it, your story starts here,
yeah,
which
yeah.
is not at the beginning?
That's right. Too many times. And that's exactly back to, I think Jigsaw was saying it, or yeah, I think, and maybe even Galen Mission. I know Mira Gold did, and I know you have. It's just, you got to start your story in the right place, which is right in the middle of action. That's what you got to do. Also, I need to mention to you, Miss Mira Gold, that we are at 12:15 right now, approximately. I didn't know if you had been keeping up with time because I know you tend not to.
Yeah, I have no concept of time, literally. Are there any questions inside of the chat at this time?
No, man, but it sure has been a lively group.
Gayleen, was there anything that you or any other eGlobal staff would like to add or contribute at this time?
I don't have anything. Jingshaw, did you want to add anything more?
Oh, I just would like to, on behalf of eGlobal, thank you, Mira Gold, CC, Lynn, for a wonderful 8-week training session. Every one of us here had learned so much. There are so much potentials in the AI world that eGlobal, as one of the leading publishers in the in the series fiction industry, we want to make sure that our authors, our editors are well aware of what is out there, mentally prepped for the development of what AI is going. So therefore, we are always there, like understanding that there is always this cutting edge tools that is going to be able to help us improve our productivity. I absolutely appreciate that throughout the session that everyone, all of our presenters, time and time again, emphasize that AI, their tools, they will never be able to replace the actual human authors because they only do things that we ask them to. It's not going to, and more, and throughout the sessions, what I learned is we use AI to help us overcome some ideas. The actual critical part of the creativity, actually, when it comes to the actual writing, the prose, sometimes it's not even our focus, right? It's more to use AI to help us to build a story that is compelling, not actually to do the writing. Yeah, I could do the writing, but I think that will come to me, I think, or in this industry, as we are all producing stories, it almost comes to the last. It can write, but we know that the prose that AI generated depends on the habit of authors, right? You may be able to use 50% of it, you may be able to use 10% of it. But majorly, I think AI's value comes down to how can AI help us to make our story more compelling. That's more on the ideas, the structures, the flow of the story, etc. Of course, the marketing side, to me, AI is a great help because that's when we have all of our stories put together and then we need some help and make it more efficient. Can our authors eventually all get there? Everyone can get there, but AI can make it more productive. So overall, I think the session are wonderful. I've learned a huge amount of knowledge, even though I know I've attended some of Marigold's earlier trainings. But again, it's never a bad idea to, after you have some experiences in the AI world and go back and then revisit some of the fundamentals, which I think every time I benefit so much from it. So thank you all for your huge amount of time and effort to put all of those training sessions together. I hope that everybody who attended these meetings, the sessions also find this valuable. eGlobal is here to help our authors, our editors. We want our whole community to benefit from what technologies can offer.
On that note, what is the best way for viewers, authors to reach out to eGlobal if they have questions or if they have a manuscript that they would like to submit for consideration?
Gaming, normally we will have our email, the authors at, is that contacts or authors at eglobalcreative.com?
It's authors. So authors at eGlobalcreativepublishing.com. You can send that there. You can also send things to me. I'll put my email in the chat here and then I can move it on from there. But
Right.
absolutely. Yeah. For general information, we usually go to the author's email and I'll put that in the chat too.
Yeah, and I think Amerigo, we certainly can share those emails. Maybe not Gavin's email, but the general email, we certainly can share it in all of AI Writers Connection group as well. So if anyone wanted to reach out, if they already come with manuscript, and then more specific, wanted to talk about publishing, I think Gavin, are you okay with those authors reach out to you directly via your personal email?
Yes, sure. Mhm. And both of them are in chat now. So either one is a way to reach us. If you have questions, if you would like to submit, if you would like to apply to boot camp, anything like that, please let us know and we'll get back to you.
And I'll be sure to put the link to or the email address to the main submission. We can put that on the AIWC YouTube description of the video as well. I won't put Gayleen's out there, but I'll put the general email out there for people. But inside of the AIWC Discord, I know Gayleen is engaging people in the eGlobal channel. So again, there's so many different ways for you to gain information about eGlobal. And I can tell you as an author through eGlobal now for several years, and I just signed a new body with them. I have never had an issue with them. They're so quick to respond. When I've had a question, I can submit that in an email. And as I said, they are really quick to explain what maybe I did not understand or help me with a process if I need to upload something. Again, as I said, I've been with eGlobal for handful of years, and like I said, I've enjoyed working with them. So I encourage you, if you have a body of work and you're interested in eGlobal, submit something, see if eGlobal is the home for your body of work. And again, there are so many different platforms out there, so many different publishers. And it's important as an author to find a house that is somewhere where you feel comfortable and that it fosters growth for you. Now, as we move forward, I encourage each of you to continue exploring and experimenting with AI in your writing. The skills and knowledge you've gained here are just the beginning of a broader, more exciting journey in the world of AI assisted writing. For those seeking further guidance or wishing to discuss specific topics, as stated already, our doors are going to always remain open. You can reach us at the Microsoft Teams for eGlobal. You can reach us on AIWC's Discord, eGlobal's Discord, and by email through for eGlobal if you have questions for eGlobal. So at this time, I do want to thank the eGlobal team for their just tremendous amount of support and working with us on these videos. We have enjoyed every minute of it. And I have enjoyed working with Lynn and with Cece to help make these sessions become possible. At this time, I'm going to turn things over to Gayleen.
All right. Thank you very much. I'm going to echo Jing Shaw's thanks to you. I know this a lot of work to put together these sessions and coming here and giving us all these demonstrations and information has just been so invaluable. So thank you so much, Mira Gold, and thank you, Lynn and Cece, for helping us out with this and giving us all this fantastic information and resources. I want to thank everybody also who has attended, and I hope that you all got some valuable information out of these sessions. And you know where to go for more questions. So if you have any questions, we're always happy to answer them. I'm sad to do this, but this is our last session in this series. So I'm going to go ahead and close it out. Thank you again, everybody, for everything, for attending the sessions, and Mira Gold, Lynn, and Cece for being here for us. Thank you so much. Everybody have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Have a good day.